Hi, so welcome back to the Fool. Hey, if you watched the shorter video, you will have got the little demo on our two versions and our little talk about our keywords. We're focusing on self-belief, self-confidence, trusting in yourself, leap of faith, new chapters, big changes. Remember, this is somebody who's reinventing themselves. These are not small changes, not little lateral moves. This is big. So, here's the more in-depth look. And remember, I'm not looking to give you a whole load of meanings that you have to write down verbatim and stick to, even if they don't feel right. This is giving you the skeleton. You get to flesh it out. And we're going to talk a bit about how you do that. We talked a little bit about the fact that this guy has a number, but does he really? It is 0. Is he the beginning? Is he at the end? Is he a bit of both? Well, 0 is a circle. Always going, never ending, eternity. We're always going through this cycle of reinvention, having to grow, having to trust in ourselves to take the next step. But 0 is also unrealized potential. It's what you are stuck at before you take the step into 1, before you actually start counting and being counted. 0 is your starting point. Now you notice on our Marseille deck, he doesn't even have a number. He doesn't have a 0. He has a blank space, blank slate, complete fresh start. Now, another way to think about how we interpret our cards, so say you can apply numerology and look at the 0. You can apply a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking. That's blank. You can also look at colors. I mentioned in our introductions, if you're into colors, what their meanings are, wanting to learn how to read auras, always thinking about, do I send somebody red flowers because red signifies love? Maybe I should just send them yellow flowers because that's friendship. If you're one of those people, colors may appeal to you. So find a deck that you like. It may be this one, like the Rider-Waite, or something like this. It may also be something like this. Now this is based on a Rider-Waite. As you can see from the back, it is the Ray Buckland Romani deck. So a lot of the imagery, while it borrows from the very familiar Rider-Waite Smith, it's done with imagery that would be associated with the Romani way of life. And now for something completely different, I've opted for Kim Grant's, and as you can see, it is the Wild Unknown. That's what the box looks like, the little one. That's what the big box looks like with a nice guidebook and everything in it. And there, the Fool, if I can get it again, she does go ahead and number at 0, but it's the little bird, the baby bird on the branch. That's a leap of faith. The bird has to trust in its wings. It cannot sit on the branch forever. It will not be able to fly. It will not be able to go and find food if it just sits on that branch forever. It has to take that leap of faith. The imagery is fantastic on this one. So, as we said, you could look at color about this one. What does red signify? Does red signify our vitality, our creative passions, alongside blue, that signifies our feeling, our intuition? Is there maybe something that we could interpret as the need to balance our hot, fiery, creative instincts along with our calmer instinct, our more thoughtful, feeling instinct? Do we need to balance the masculine and feminine? Is that what it takes to succeed in this leap of faith? We have to feel balanced, otherwise we topple over the cliff? Is that something that the colors could be telling you? I don't know. What do you think? But if you love colors and you look at this, you're not going to be thinking about the red and the blue, because the Rider-Waite-Smith is all about the yellow. What's yellow? Yellow is about intellect. It's about the mental. It's about being mentally prepared. But also, when we talked about our suits, we mentioned briefly that yellow is often associated with spring, sunrise, new starts, the beginning of something. Think about spring. Spring is very much the beginning of new things, the start. Again, we have a teeny tiny little bird, so again, we're going to tie into spring. New way of thinking, the east and the yellow often associated with intellect. Mentality, how we look at things. What is our own mentality? Does that need to change? Do we need to have a different mindset for this leap of faith? Something to think about. You can analyze all the colors in this. You could look at the fact that he's wearing bits of green and bits of orange. You could look at the fact that the dog is white. In some Nordic cultures, the white dog or the white wolf symbolizes protection. Is that element a protective element? Is that saying you can take this leap of faith? I've got you. You're protected. What do you think? Make your notes. Make your keywords. Now, the negative or reversed. Now remember, they're not the same thing. We talked briefly in the introduction about a negative aspect to a spread. Now, we don't like to have too many negatives in spreads, but there are certain spreads where there could be an area where you place a card that says, what's holding me back? Or what obstacles am I going to need to overcome? What personal characteristic could get in the way of my plan succeeding? Those are what I would call negative placements. What do you do when you get this guy in the negative placement? Well, it's the same as the reverse. Now, we'll talk more about reverse, whether you do reverse cards, whether you don't, whether you do them deliberately or whether you wait for them to be accidental. Tarot card readers are wildly divided on all of those things. So, again, it will be up to you, and whatever choice you make will be the right choice, because it'll be the right choice for you. There's no point in trying to add things into your readings that don't feel organic, that don't feel right. If having reversed cards in your reading doesn't feel like the right thing, don't do them. But you will find with certain spreads that you learn how to do these negative placements. So let's have a look. What kind of potential hazard could there be for this card? Again, let's look at it quite intuitively. We looked at the colors there. He's wearing a lot of blue, he's also wearing a lot of red. One represents fire and creativity and passion. The other represents feeling and emotion. There's a yin and a yang, just could it be a lack of balance will make you topple? You've got to evaluate cards like this. Carefree versus impulsive. Leap of faith versus you need to look before you leap. You can't just come up with a wonderful idea and then run off over the edge of the cliff in all your excitement. There's also the idea of don't become so preoccupied by this new chapter, by this excitement, this reinvention, that you become so obsessed that you don't see the dangers. You don't see anything around you. You're not prepared for the pitfalls. Hasty decisions can turn out bad. Leap of faith is one thing. So remember, when it shows up in the right place in a reading, it's good, it's fun, it's exciting, it's great for your client. If it shows up in the what is holding me back? Well, what is holding you back? Maybe you don't have self-confidence to take that leap of faith. Maybe you don't have self-belief. Maybe you're impulsive. Maybe in the past you have made impulsive decisions and they haven't led to happy places. If that placement is, what obstacles do I need to overcome? You need to make sure that you see the dangers, that you look before you leap, that you have thought about every possible outcome. Our little bird. Can our little bird launch itself from any branch? Would it be better if it was the lowest branch? Would it be better if it was the highest branch? Does he want a branch directly underneath him to catch him just in case? Or is that not going to give him enough time to flap those wings and he's just going to get smacked in the butt? You need to think about these things. Where is it leading? Balance. Now, as you can see, the positive and the potentially negative are quite obvious because they're almost mirror images of each other. If you can grasp one, you can grasp the opposite. If trusting in yourself and taking a leap of faith is the plus side, then being impulsive and not looking before you leap is the natural other side of the coin. You don't have to learn two separate meanings, because once you have your keywords and your intuitive understanding of what you feel that represents, the rest comes quite easily and quite naturally. It's very much about your interpretation, using the imagery as a guide, but remembering that that is the artist's interpretation of an age-old meaning. The meanings tended to come from anywhere from sort of, we're talking the 1800s through to the 1900s, where you had the Marseille deck used for divination, and then the Rider-Waite-Smith deck made more accessible and given clearer meanings. But it was always originally about the reader's interpretation. And most people who enjoy reading and do really good readings for people have gone back to that philosophy, using the keywords idea as the skeleton and then using their own interpretation to flesh it out. Sometimes their interpretation will be based largely on their own instincts. Always a good choice. Other times their instincts are led by whatever deck they're using. So we looked at Kim Krantz, The Wild Unknown, and we talked about the little bird and what that signified for the Fool. We also talked about the difference between the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and there being so much yellow there. We did the compare and contrast with the Marseille deck. Marseille. Put my teeth back in. And we looked at blue and the red and what that could signify. It's great to compare decks. And as I mentioned in the introduction, it's unavoidable. You will buy multiple decks. You will become fascinated with owning tarot card decks. You won't necessarily read with them all. You will have your 2, maybe 3 favorite decks that you enjoy reading with. Some decks you'll read for friends and family, others you'll keep for professional. Every once in a while you might change it up, but you may only have 2 or 3 decks that you actually read with. I have 3. I use the Marseille deck, sometimes use the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and then I use the Romani deck as well, which, as I showed you, the imagery is heavily based on Rider-Waite-Smith anyway. And those are the decks that I generally read with. But I have lots of other tarot decks. I enjoy collecting them, and they offer a great opportunity to take out the cards and see what that artist has said about that card. Either just looking at the card, looking at the color palette they've chosen, their artistic style, what they've put in the background. Have they put lots of background in? Is it very fussy? Is there lots of detail? Can you interpret things from that detail? Or is it very minimalist? Have they chosen a monochromatic color palette? Have they gone very muted? Have they gone very bright? You can look at, what does that make you think of? And then, as I keep saying, you get your little book and you make notes. Not every single note that you make has to come into every single reading. It just gives you more of an insight. And that's all you're looking for, to flesh out that skeleton, to get insight into the cards. From there, you'll be able to apply what fits to your readings, and you'll also be able to look at it the other way around. You'll be doing readings, you'll be talking to the client or your friends, whoever you're reading for. Sometimes it feels strange to think of friends or family as clients, but as you're talking to them, you'll find out more about what they're looking for, their life experiences, and you will compare that with the cards as you see them. And that will also give you insight into card meanings and particularly combinations. And then you'll come back to your little notebook, never very far away, and you will make notes again. And those two, your experience versus your intuition, will flesh out your understanding of the card and how it works in a spread. Because really that's what it's about. I know I keep banging on about it, but it's about your understanding of the meanings and your intuition, and bringing those together, and that's what's going to give you the most accurate, in-depth readings that people are going to come back time and time again for. Last note on the Fool, I did mention about how we use Major Arcana for timings. When we talked about the suits, we talked about how the Minor Arcana are actually easier because they come numbered, except obviously with the court cards, that's a little bit different. When we get to those, we'll talk more about them. But they're generally numbered 2 to 10. So that could give you an idea of weeks or months. They have a suit. Again, that could give you an idea of seasons. We talked about swords representing spring. We talked about autumn being represented by cups. So that can factor in. We also talked about passive and aggressive cards. So the active, aggressive cards that are now, quickly, things are going to unfold rapidly. And we talked about the more passive cards, where it's going to be a slow burn. It's going to take longer. The Minor Arcana is great for timing. And remember, you can always use the Minor Arcana as a clarifying card. If you get a Major Arcana card in a reading, in a position that's asking about timing, or if your client just asks, when will this happen? Is this going to be soon or next year? What kind of time frame am I looking at? And you just draw a random card from the deck, and it's a Major Arcana. Like I say, there is a way, but you can always use a clarifying card from the Minor Arcana deck. You don't have to rely just on the Major. Having said that, there is a structure that's been set up. And again, as always, you can change the structure. It's entirely up to you. The most common one used is to use astrology. So if astrology is your thing, you're going to love it. But there are various ways of doing it. You can assign a zodiac sign to the card based on the card's imagery. Again, that will vary deck to deck, but the qualities of the card, the characteristics, the skeleton that we talked about, that might influence what you think with regards to zodiac signs. There are some obvious and easy ones. Justice, she has scales. She seems a little bit more like a Libra. Then there's the High Priestess, mysterious, emotional, intuitive. That's very Cancer. It's very all about the moon. The moon could also be considered very Cancer, also about the moon. So you can look that way and decide to assign characteristics. I often see strength assigned Leo. But what you can also do is lay out all the Major Arcana, start to finish, and start your zodiac from the 1st of January, the first zodiac sign, and you can assign them in sequence and let the chips fall where they may. It's up to you. The system I've got is, I'll be honest, a little bit of both. I find that having started that way and then looking at what fits and what kind of doesn't, some of the qualities. If you're into astrology, you'll know certain planets are associated with certain qualities and characteristics. Those qualities and characteristics may again be represented in your cards, and therefore you may pair them up. Saturn being associated with intelligence and thought, things like that. That could lead you to look at your cards and go, well, that's that, definitely. So you can also use the numbers. A lot of people use numerology and tie it in with astrology and decide, well, if you reduce this down to this number, what is the 5th month? What is the 5th zodiac sign? You can also use other calendars. You could use lunar cycles. You can use, say, the Celtic calendar and say, well, the first zodiac sign would be from the end of October, and we start from the end of October, and that's how we assign it. It really is based on what fits for you. For me, and the system I have used, as I say, it's mostly a linear system. Start of the zodiac, start of the major arcana. But I have made changes. I have messed about with a couple of them because some of the cards just lend themselves so well to a particular zodiac sign. They just yell. As I said, strength just kind of yells, I'm a Leo. Justice kind of yells, Libra. So it's quite fitting to just be able to move them around a little bit. And as I've said, it's up to you. It has to feel right for you. If it doesn't make sense to you and you're just following somebody else's system, it's never going to flow. It's never going to feel like it's coming naturally because it's not authentically you. And that's really, really important when it comes to giving tarot card readings. So for me, the Fool is an Aquarius. Anybody who's ever met an Aquarius would definitely agree with that. I have an Aquarius child. They tend to be carefree, a little bit impulsive, very bold, nice childlike, playful quality, but also absolutely assume that they're 100 times smarter than everybody else. They can see everything, and they just don't understand why everybody doesn't immediately defer to them on all topics. So Aquarius, if you're using those kind of timings, as I say, you have a little bit. You don't have to remember every single little thing, particularly with timings. It will eventually stick, but make a little note. There's nothing wrong with doing readings with a little book. Now, having said that, if you lay out your spread and then you start doing this, because I'm looking for the book, and then I've got this book, and I've got the book with my notes, and I've got these 2 books that I bought, and let's compare and contrast, and where are those little leaflets that came with the deck? The person sitting opposite you. Now, this counts for Zoom as well. They're still opposite you. They're just technologically speaking opposite you. But the person sitting opposite you will start to think, does this person actually know what they're doing? They may also think, at this rate, I could just grab a book and do it for myself. Yes, you can. But sometimes it's better when somebody else reads for you, particularly if you've been doing it for a while and you've got the hang of it and you've got that intuitive flow. The intuitive flow is stopped dead in its tracks when you're looking around for books and you're trying to read this and here and you're looking to remember your notes. It gets messy. That said, there's no reason why you can't have one little book or one little list to the side as a reference to glance back at. And the times when that really is useful is for timings, because it's not going to be something that crops up every single time. And given that there are 78 cards in the deck, it's not going to be the same card that crops up on a regular basis. So there's nothing wrong with having a little piece of paper with the list on, or your notebook, and going, oh, okay, the Fool, that's an Aquarius, so timing-wise, you're looking sort of end of January to end of February, so 21st of Jan to 20th of February, that's kind of the area that you're looking at. Now, of course, if your client goes, it's October, January, February, yeah, I could see that, fair enough, great. If your client goes, oh, it's Easter, that's a long way away. Are there other steps that I can take that will speed that along, that's when you start pulling out your clarifying cards, and you can start using your minor arcana to give more information on that, because it may be that further away date is more about completion. It's not about when things are going to start. But major arcana, if you're going to use them for timings, Zodiac is a really, really useful way of nailing it down. Also works really well for New Year spreads, because as you're spreading them out, somebody's looking for something that's going to cover roughly 12 months. What's happening to me this year? And as you spread out those cards, the Zodiac will work really well with your New Year spread. So when we do the video on spreads, we'll look at timing and how we can use the Zodiac in with our 12-month spread. Because although a lot of people ask for the readings at New Year, that's when it's most popular, some people do a year ahead spread for their birthdays and things, so it is a 12-month spread. So there we go. That is your in-depth look at the Fool and how to read him in various positions. Till next time.